On live. All right, I'm Mark Betancourt, Chairman of the School Building Committee. We are calling this meeting to order of the School Building Committee. Quorum is in attendance. The only voting member not here right now is Christine DeSazio, and she has informed me that she is on her way. So
Sheila Hayes, too.
Sheila Hayes is online.
Oh,
So Sheila Hayes and Bill Hull are both online, and the rest of us are here. We also have in attendance some of our ex officio members. So we have Corporation Counsel Mike Driscoll, always a pleasure, of course. And we have Chris LaRose from NPU. Those are, I think, official.
Good evening, Mark.
Good evening. And Peter, and of course, Peter Nystrom, of course, the mayor is also online here. Thanks for pointing that out. And let's see, I think that covers it. And we also have Matt Brown. It's Matt, right?
Matt Brown.
Matt Brown, right from Norwich Public Schools. Pam Kinder from UCFS Healthcare.
and Bob Serpensky.
And Bob Serpensky, right from
Good evening, everyone.
good evening. So that should cover the attendance. All right. So we're gonna approve the minutes. You should have received them. The email from July 18th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes. There are some minor corrections.
Have they been given to the secretary yet, or?
I know I contacted that committee in the minutes. It said committee members present. William Hull was not mentioned in the committee members present, and he was at the last meeting.
Yep.
President and making motions.
Yes, he was, yes. Yeah, he's in the body, yeah, obviously. All right,
So there's second.
yeah, any other, is there a second? Yeah, there is a second. There's a second, but well, Mark Kulos made the motion. Did you second? Peter Gauthier made the motion, made the second. Were there any other corrections?
I submitted minor comments.
Okay. So the minutes stand as will stand as corrected. Or let me just put this way. To approve will as corrected. We have, obviously, this meeting is being recorded. It's a hybrid, and we'll do votes by roll call. Today we'll be going around the room. We're voting on the minutes, Christine. Christine DeSazio just walked in.
Good.
So myself, I'll start. Yes. Joe DeLucia.
Yes.
Christine, do you want to vote on the minutes?
Yes.
Yes. Mark Kulos.
Yes.
Peter Gauthier.
Yes.
Stacy Gould.
Yes.
Cindy Beauregard.
Yes.
The other Greg, no, Greg Galassi.
I'll abstain.
Okay, you'll abstain. That's right. You weren't here. Okay. Greg Carabine abstained. Bill Hull.
Yes.
Where's Sheila? She's there. Sheila Hayes.
Yes,
Okay. We have nine yes, 2 abstentions on the minutes. Minutes are approved. Next piece, a report from CSG regarding the whole ball of wax. So what we've been up to here.
So we can start with the ed specs. Now that DRA has been brought on board, we met with the superintendent and her team, as well as the team from DRA, who also had some educational planners on there. We re-reviewed the ed specs with the educational planners. We made some additional cuts. There were some shifts that were made, and we finally arrived at a building program that's within the space allocation for the program. We updated the drafts of the ed specs that we had to include that new table, as well as the new space allocation table, as well as all the narratives for each of the individual spaces. We removed any spaces that were no longer part of the program anymore, that may have been removed, and assembled it into a final draft. The final revisions weren't really any major programmatic changes. It was just more or less some spaces were made smaller to accommodate what we needed to do. we're down at 4 preschool rooms. We went back up to 5 preschool rooms with some other cuts. So there were more shifts than anything. And some of the spaces that the superintendent and her team had asked us to benchmark, we benchmarked with DRA, mainly the special ed spaces. And in some of the spaces, we went in depth with the enrollment that they would have in each of the spaces, how the spaces would be used during the day. So in some cases, if it was a self-contained classroom, we really got the understanding as to how a self-contained special education classroom would be used and made adjustments based on how they would be used. So it was a really productive meeting. At the end of it, we were able to get down to the space allocation that we needed. So, at this point, we're moving forward. The drafts that we had created have been updated at this point. They're in the hands of DRA just to look over, potentially make some modifications as far as any of the, building systems type stuff to potentially embellish it, just to give a more general description of the air conditioning, plumbing, and electrical systems that'll go into the building, just to make it a more complete document. The front end I had already completed, it had some history about the projects and the city and how they had arrived at this point, just to give, the state and some of the stakeholders that are going to be reviewing it and approving it in the Board of Education, a better idea as to, what's actually going to be happening. So, really happy with the progress. We're scheduled with the Board of Education for the 23rd. I think it's next Wednesday, to present the educational specifications. I sent an email out earlier in the week to DRA, just letting them know that I would need all of their updates to the educational specifications by next Wednesday if they had any, just to give us enough time.
This Wednesday.
This Wednesday, yeah, to properly assemble it and get those over to Mark so that they can be put on the agenda.
I just want to clarify, Mike, when you say we're in the space allocation, but the space allocation is still about 5,000 square feet over the state standard. And we pushed it a little bit based on the budget to try to accommodate the space requirements that the program has. But keep it in the budget that we felt comfortable. So there will be a requirement for a space waiver.
Yeah, so we've talked about that before. They will be looking for a legislative, waiver, to add the additional 5,000 feet for reimbursement purposes. So we have the money should be there in the referendum to accommodate the 80,000, and then some, hopefully, depending if inflation stays at a reasonable level, we may luck out and have a little to play with where, we can maybe do some things or whatever. We can make some decisions that way or save the city some money. So all those are good.
And the one thing that everyone should be aware of with regards to the space program, we're still using the updated ed spec enrollment projection from Cropper based for the pre-K enrollment. I believe, just trying to,
There was some,
I believe it's 347 for pre-K enrollment across the district. So I just wanted everyone to be aware that those are the numbers that we're still
that is an issue
forward with.
because their published reports at least have a number and then around 400, I think.
Mhm.
So what they're gonna, spaces they're gonna create, seats they're gonna, create. Mark?
Yeah, so what we'll probably have to have is another demographic study before we do the other two schools.
Mhm.
Because what happens,
Yeah.
that cohort, as it moves forward from preschool through the grades,
Mhm.
is probably going to affect classroom space for the rest
Yeah.
of the project.
And it'll also should be able to give you a relatively decent expectation as to what you'll have for the pre-K spaces going forward, at least at a minimum, for Uncas Moriarty, this process that we're going through now would essentially start next March. So, we would have some data potentially by then as to what the enrollment may look like.
Why would the follow-on classes have to change?
Because the cohort starts in pre-K assuming you have, right now, the cohort of pre-K is 233. We're increasing the size of that cohort up to 400 seats. So potentially, you have an extra 170
For the pre-K.
children
But
in the
later-
pre-K. So assuming they all go to our elementary schools, you've got an extra 170 kids that are now going to be starting in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, as they progress through the grades.
Shouldn't be, well,
Yeah.
unless you,
I know where you're going, Peter, and I think, you know, when the demographer takes a look, we gotta take a look at the birth rates. So I think it might be a good idea to revisit the demographic study, you know, maybe in February, so that way we have it on board for when we do Moriarty. But I hear what you're saying. Right now, the demographic study is 347, therefore it should be even going through, right? From kindergarten, first grade.
no, so like comment, my thinking was, let's see. 347 goes in. 3K,
Right.
250 goes in today. But by the time you get to kindergarten, if I started with 400 in an equal year, I should have 400 when I get to pre-K and first grade and second grade. So
At
the
least.
follow-on years shouldn't change. The only effect should be on pre-K.
Yeah. The pre-K is a little different in that they not necessarily
Yeah,
Yeah,
but if you have an
everyone's in
additional
there.
60 kids, you're gonna need potentially 3 more classrooms for each grade.
Pre-K, but I'm saying the only thing that should be affected in the project relative to what the student levels is in the different grades going forward is only pre-K. Because there's only 400.
Well, we'll have to reassess. It's a whole package,
But
Yeah.
as those kids
Yeah.
age,
so,
they're gonna age out into another grade.
yeah.
So what happens when those 60 additional kids reach first grade, where you're gonna see them?
No, so if I have 400 students, this is it, 400 students start in 22, right?
Right,
So it's pre-K, 400 going to pre-K.
right.
But suppose only 250 go to pre-K. When I get to 26 and I get to first grade, those 400 students, whether they went to pre-K or did not, should show up in first grade. So it doesn't matter for the follow-on years, only the pre-K.
For that one grade, yeah.
For all, yeah, well, pre-K is the only grade that grows. The rest of the school system stays the same, because as the kids march through, you're gonna.
Yeah, but here's the thing, we redo the demographics and stuff, the whole thing can change.
Sure, that's a different. issue.
Yeah.
So
I'm
that's what I'm saying is the whole thing has got to be revisited as a whole in order to complete the grant process for Moriarty,
Mhm.
Kelly and Uncas. So it's gonna have to be redone anyway, probably. So that one.
And the state's gonna want updated.
Yeah,
enrollment
they're gonna want
projections for the
under-
next, yeah.
No,
I understand, I
see your
understand what,
point.
I
see-
understand what you're saying.
I see your point, but it's, like I said, we're gonna have to redo those numbers anyway. So,
All right, the projection was 347 that we're going with, right?
Right.
So assuming there's 60
Okay,
additional,
let's move on.
Okay.
Well, I can show you.
all right, sure.
Just now.
Alright.
So with that being said, we'll present the ed specs at the meeting. I don't anticipate that there'll be a ton of questions. Maybe there will, but we'll have enough people there to
Be
be
there,
able
yeah.
to- be able to answer them. Also, you know, further in the agenda, and we'll touch on that when we get there, the draft for the construction management RFP.
Before we, when are we gonna see the ed specs?
I can get them to you the same day that I get them from DRA. Or once they're assembled, I'll send them to Mark as well as, well, both Marks. And then they can be distributed at that time. The draft for the construction management RFP is later on the agenda, so I'm not gonna touch on that right now. Some other things that I've been doing in the meantime is reaching out to the different local agencies here in Norwich. So I met with met with the planning and zoning department, with Deanna Rhodes, Dan Coley. And one other gentleman, his name is escaping me from. He works in Dan's office. We started talking about the project and the locations where we're gonna be. Trying to go through, permitting fees, what he was gonna be looking for as far as the reviews of the drawings and all of that. So I think we have a pretty good handle, they're gonna be looking for us to have an independent review of the drawings for each of these projects, as well as potentially some independent reviews regarding on-site inspections that the building department would do. They're gonna be forwarding me some names of folks that they've used in the past. And then we'll look to get a scope and try and get pricing and get someone on board for that. As well as that, there's been a number of emails between myself and a few gentlemen from Norwich Public Utilities.
Including Chris.
I started with Chris, been speaking with Rob Harris and Bill Ryan. Bill Ryan sent us some GIS maps of all the properties, so we know where the utilities currently are located out in the streets and the abutting streets. So that should be helpful to DRA as far as, where the utility entrances are going to be going into the sites. The more critical thing for me at this point is trying to understand what the permitting fees are going to be for these projects. It's looking like they're trending higher than I expected. Depending on, there's still some more information that MPU is going to need from us. It looks like we're going to, be given. It looks like Greenville will be a more cost-effective site to build on as far as sewer connection anyway, because it's an enterprise zone.
50% reduction. in enterprise.
Yeah. However, I'm gonna have to talk to you guys about what pre-existing students would mean. I don't know if I would go back 11 years.
So sewer connection fee is tied to the property.
Okay,
And what we are going from as a baseline is the highest use of sewer in there. So if you had 1,000 students in there,
mhm,
that's at the historical high of that property. That is where we start the sewer connection fee. And if you put in 1,200 students, it's 200 more additional students, and it's a half an EDU or
Okay.
$150 per student. So the way to get this as low as can be is to find the maximum population that's ever been in that school.
okay. That may be a challenge for Greenville. I don't,
You
I
should be
don't
able
know.
to find out something.
I don't know if there's still enrollment data for that school. Stanton should be much easier. And then,
Yeah,
the other thing I'm gonna need from you guys is, elect some type of rough cost for, electrical and gas.
Yeah, so the gas is, depending on where it's coming from, we're gonna try to provide that for free.
Okay,
The electric, it's the transformer is gonna be the big piece.
Yeah.
And right now, transformer costs are
Yeah.
10 times what we saw
Yeah.
before COVID.
yeah, and
And,
getting them,
and then what's your electric load? Until you have an electric
Yeah.
load, you can't size the transformer.
yeah, right,
So if you take a similar school,
Mhm.
someplace else from your history, we can come up with a today's cost of that.
yeah,
But if this is a year down the road, the way things are going up
Yeah.
10%, it could be significantly more, and they've
Yeah.
gone up much more than that. Just to put things in perspective, we have not received a new transformer in 2 years.
mhm,
We have millions of dollars in orders. Nothing is coming in. We've only been able to get reconditioned
mhm.
transformers. And we're hoping this will soon, will start being mitigated. But right now, it's the biggest challenge in the electrical industry. It's not NPU, it's the entire country has this issue.
So we're getting those from China too.
So we're getting reconditioned transformers from Wisconsin. When we have a transformer that fails.
But where are the originals, the new ones?
They're all American, but they
Even the new one?
Yeah.
They're just having trouble with their
Getting
manufacturing
the part.
process.
probably you can't get.
We're gonna need a much larger transformers, especially for the EV charging stations that are gonna be required for parking
Well,
areas.
EV charging, if it's level 2, is not a huge load. If you want a fast charger, it's a very significant transformer.
Um,
And I would think in a place like
Bill
this,
higher and
a level
higher.
2 would be more than that.
You don't need
Yeah.
speakers.
I don't think it specifies.
no, it's just, there has to be a certain amount of space.
This is right, it's per.
Yeah, But if you see,
20% of your parking.
if you see the Tesla
Yeah.
chargers, that's not what you're talking
Yeah, yeah,
about.
yeah.
You're talking level 2.
The slower ones.
And that, they're not a huge load.
And then,
220 or something.
you know, I'll speak to you more offline, because if there's any potential for us to pre-order the transformers with you guys. that would
If
be-
you get us,
Like a
if you get us a
drive.
size,
Mhm.
and that's a little bit conservative, we'll get them on order.
Yeah, okay.
immediately.
Okay,
Yeah, and if there's anything else for me, let me know, because I've got another meeting
Yeah.
at 7.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
everybody's-
that's
Several
I'll
people
work
running
with-
for the
I'll
seven.
work with Rob, and then I'll send you whatever you need as far as the other stuff.
So Rob is our project coordinator.
Okay.
He's the point of contact for.
Okay.
For everyone, but we'll bring in our electrical
Yeah.
team when it
You
comes
going-
time to
yeah.
talk to that gas piece.
Mhm.
You
All of our experts, but Rob's one who coordinates all that, does fire testing,
Yeah.
quality testing.
And what I'll try and do is get approximate loads for all the different utilities over to you guys.
Yep.
And then that way we can, at least get a rough cost as to what the permitting
Yeah.
fees are gonna be.
And when it comes to sewer and water.
Yeah.
Contractor puts all on property. So gas, we will install the pipe. And electric will pull the wire and connect to a transformer. All
Yeah,
secondary
yeah,
is
yeah,
done by
same,
the
same as
contractor.
the normal utilities, basically.
Just make sure you transform it as close to the building as possible.
Yeah,
We're trying to make this as
Yeah.
economical as we
Not
can. but
You don't
we
want it
also
too
wanna push it
close.
Back on the ratepayers.
You ever see
Yeah.
one of them
It
things
had
blow
to
up,
close,
man?
so we don't want it close.
You ever
And
see
you
one of
guys
them things
also-
blow
Like
up?
that happens when they
insurance.
push.
You don't want that close.
We have a municipal area network for
okay,
a city,
Trees
but
on-
that is, and all, we manage a CEN with the Board of Ed.
okay.
And
And there's a fee for that as well, to tie into that, or?
we can work
Okay,
through this.
okay.
for them,
Yeah,
so.
all right, perfect. That's great,
And
thank you.
Chris, are we eligible for rebates for, say, geothermal or solar?
Absolutely. Right
Oh.
now, we're not really subsidizing solar. We're gonna have something in place long before the school starts, with a new program. All CMEC members are gonna be doing this. So that program will probably go into effect around January 1.
Any
And,
idea what that's gonna look like?
Huh?
Any idea what that's gonna look like?
well, I have a good idea what it's gonna look like in residential, but not.
All right, tell me when residential. right? Talk about these things.
So it's gonna be a little different, and we haven't come up with that number, what the value, is gonna be. But we wanna be consistent.
But you won't be doing that metering or anything like that, though.
No, but we will give, right now, we're doing completely wholesale.
Wholesale. Right.
And that's what's probably most fair. All customers, we're not subsidizing it. But we
Right.
need
I
to
understand.
improve our green footprint and lower our carbon. So, you know, in terms of carbon reduction, we're willing to pay a little more, and that's what we're figuring on that
Okay.
final number.
So we should probably interface on that as well, because by the time January rolls around, we likely have. We see about midway through the design, so, you know, trying to get that in early.
Absolutely.
So solar will like go expand to commercial and big buildings like schools and things like
Yeah,
that?
but there will be a cap, just because we're such a small community, but there will be some incentive.
Okay,
More than what we have now. Anything else?
right.
Other than that, no, I think, you know, I have all the contacts with all the, you know, local departments, health department, fire department, police department, so, you know, as needed, we'll be reaching out to all of them for their involvement in the project as well.
You run into Mike?
So Mike, just on a permitting fees, you said it was running higher than.
I just note that
Well,
Stacy.
until I run the numbers, yeah, I mean,
Just
Sometimes
sometimes,
another meeting.
yeah, yeah. Oh, what, some perspective of,
yeah, so like 10%, 150%, what do we?
I mean, the first figures based on the rough numbers that I had without the enrollment is trending like probably about 100,000 just for sewer over. I mean, I wasn't expecting that it was gonna be, you know, $1,200 per additional student, but again, I haven't run. I need to get the enrollment numbers to really see where it's gonna go.
Any other questions for Mike? You're in
I mean, I guess the only other one is we're working through the contract now with, DRA to get that all finalized.
That's right.
So, you know, depending on when we get that finalized, if it's in our best interest to issue them a PO for the surveying services and the hazardous materials services to get the testing done while it's still the summer, which is that window's
Better.
closing very rapidly. We'll try and do it, but,
So you're working with Josh on that? Or?
Bob,
And
What, the
Bob?
contract?
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as far as the possibility of a PO or something like that for the other services.
I think. Well, it may not be very much of a time savings. It looks like by the time the contract gets signed, I need to talk to Bob more on that.
I just wanted to make sure that that contract is
Mhm.
good and protects our interests
Yeah,
as we go forward.
Right.
So I'd rather go out with POs.
Mhm.
I got that contract, I sent it to USI, who's our insurance agent, and they're going through it. As well as I got, Michael gave me, something from Diocese, so I want to make sure that the terms and conditions in there are not so skewed towards the architect that if we run into a hiccup down the line. that-
Hmm. Oh, and I will tell you, it's something to be careful. I mean, we did get into issues with the Kelly project with that, so. Back in the day, so it was certainly something you want to be aware of.
Do those CM contracts have to be approved by any state agency?
The construction man, architect,
The architect.
The architect or the
No, it just has to be
CM?
approved by the municipality.
All right,
the one thing I will tell everyone regarding the contract, DRA was finally able. You know, about that to me today. I haven't spoken to them. Tomorrow, first thing, I'll be calling them to try and see if there's another vendor that they could potentially use to get the price in line with the allowance that we had provided.
I forgot how much over was it? I read it, but how much over the allowance was it?
I think we had 25,000 for each project, so one of them was around 12,000, and I think the other one was 16,000 over,
Really?
something like that. Those are rough numbers again. I
Yeah.
can give you the exact figures, but they were,
No problem. just
you know,
wondering.
and they were higher than, you know, some of the past projects, so, you know, try and get an explanation and potentially get that cost back in line with the allowances that we had listed for them.
All right, any other questions?
Are we all set, do you think, as far as your glide path for getting the project into OS?
Yep. We should have all the ed specs and everything we need for the, our independent estimator to start working on the estimate that we'll need for the, grant submission. The other elements to the grant submission, as much of it as I can get done now that we've arrived at a final square footage I've been putting together, so. You know, there's other forms that are gonna need to go that I'll distribute to you guys once they're finalized, and then, you know, there's some signatures that we'll need on some of them, but. You know, we already have the resolutions for the funding as far as the referendum passing, got all that from Josh. You know, the school safety and security letter, we found out from the state that they're not requiring that as a submission criteria anymore, and we have that in writing, so we'll upload, you know, there's still a section for you to fill it out, so we'll upload that to the section, then stating that it's not a requirement anymore. There's a site analysis form that basically gives all the details of the sites as far as acreage, zoning, square footage of the new building, approximate parking spaces that are going, you know, service connections as far as utilities. That form is ready to go. Essentially, I'm waiting for the parking count based on the, you know, teacher and visitor load to the building. So once I have that, you know, I'll be able to plug that number in. I'm just trying to think of some of that. The ed specs will be approved. We'll have the approvals on the ed specs well in advance. So yeah, I mean, we should be good for, you know, the 1st of September for the submission. It may spill over potentially a week, but it'll still be 3 to 4 weeks in advance of what the deadline the state gave us was,
That's what we gave the state, actually.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all right.
or the state agreed to.
Yeah, right. Anything else, Peter? You had that look. You got that look.
Yeah. I just wanted to
Christine?
make a comment, regarding the space parameters that the
Mhm.
state set. How old are those space parameters? Do you have any idea?
Mm,
Are they ancient? No, because I'm just thinking, I wouldn't see any reason why we wouldn't be approved for a space waiver because
Oh, no, I own
it sounds right. It sounds like that they were set a long time ago. So, and that was before all our mental health needs went sky high
Yeah.
after the lockdown.
Well, the space standard, it's the same space standards as utilized in any community, so it's just basically a general form where you put
Gotcha.
in,
Exactly.
you know,
They don't
how many
consider-
students and how many square footage you're building to,
Right,
and then.
no consideration for mitigating factors.
Yeah, we did, we did one for Kelly.
Yeah.
So, this is not unusual.
It's
It's
not
not unusual in almost any school project these days. They usually ask me.
Because that's the issue with them needing all that extra space, as I'm sure you found
Yeah.
out with discussing
Yeah.
all those private spaces to.
The special education
one-on-one
program
versus
seems a little larger
STEM,
than.
mental
I
health.
mean, the master plan considered the 80,000 square foot scenario,
Right.
so that's why we're sitting there now. But and that's what the bond referendum was contemplating, so.
Mhm.
So no matter what, the money's there to pay for it. It's just a question of whether the city of Norwich picks up the tab for the 5,000 square feet or we get it reimbursed. So obviously we want to have it reimbursed.
Just as the master plan, as far as the budgeting is concerned, was based around 525 as the number, so.
Yeah.
The fact that the enrollment increased a little, it did
Yeah, right. it's
skew
changed.
the size. I think they were at, I want to say 75, 254 with a space standard based on 525 kids. That square footage number could be off. And when we increase the enrollment,
That's true.
yeah.
Sorry, hi, I'm Erin, I'm the youth family. and
Oh,
recreation manager
okay, that's
for
right,
the
that's
city.
right. Okay.
I just haven't heard any talk as to like what the recreational space will look like in the schools, like in terms of like, are they all gonna have gymnasium? Are they
Yes.
gonna
Yeah.
separate
So
from
the gym,
Yeah.
yeah, so they'll, I think the 6,000 square foot and the gyms and the two facilities right now. I think that's the number we're looking
Will
at.
there be a private
Plus-
entrance for our program?
Well, we can probably,
We're-
When we start
Yeah.
programming, that's what
Yeah.
we'll start
Yeah.
letting you know.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I figured, I just wasn't sure if it was gonna be the combo half.
No.
gym, but
oh, no,
there's
no,
not
no,
that
no. But thanks for bringing that up. No, we're not, that would be a big nope. All right, anything else? We'll ask again. All right, here and then we'll move forward. So invoices for CSG. So we had two. So first is Greenville for $16,169.95. Could I get a motion to approve, please, for payment? So moved by Peter Gauthier. Could I get a second? Second by Christine DeStazio. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll start on the Zoom callers. Sheila Hayes. You got
Yes,
unmuted.
yep, yes,
Thank you. Bill Hull,
Yes.
Greg Carabine. Yes. Rick Velasi.
Yes.
Cindy Beauregard.
Yes.
Peter Gauthier. Mark Kulos.
Yes.
Christine DeStazio.
Yes.
Joe DeLucia.
Yes.
And myself is a yes.
That may need to be-
Passes unanimously 11-0.
Yeah, shoot me an email, because it's supposed to be.
The second invoice is for Stanton in the amount of $15,879.33.
Mark Kulos make a motion to accept.
Motion by Marculo, second, please.
Hey.
Christine DeStazio again.
this is Sheila. Can we
Yeah.
please put the dates in? I had missed that on the first one, that we should include the dates.
Oh, I put it in, I do anyway, but yeah. I will.
Okay,
All right, so this is for
okay,
the month of July.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
copy and paste from it.
Okay.
okay.
All right, yeah, it's for the month of July, we'll note for the record here, so. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll start down here, I'll start, yes, Joe DeLucia.
Yes.
Christine DeStazio, Mark Kulos.
Yes.
Peter Gauthier.
Yes.
Cindy Beauregard, Greg Velazquez. You're just looking for me to slip up, aren't you? Greg Carabine, yes.
yes.
Bill Hull,
Yes.
Sheila Hayes,
Yes.
and myself, yes, it's 10-0, one absent now, because we'll note that, and on the previous vote, excuse me, Stacy Gould did go up to to another meeting. So next item on the agenda. Discussion of the draft RFP/Q for the construction manager for Stanton and Greenville. So you guys, everyone, I emailed it to you today and should have, that's on me. I should have sent it to you last Friday, but that's my my brain. But you have a hard copy, Christine. I hope that makes you happy. So you have a hard copy here. So now, Mike, in the correspondence it's in the email I sent you earlier, noted that we didn't have to jump on this. I mean, there is some urgency. I don't think this is anything we can sit on, because this is August, and he said we could wait to get it approved by Monday, and then by next month, for next month. But I don't know if you want to do that or not. So we'll discuss that situation too. So and what the timetable is at this point. Mike indicated they'd like to have somebody on board by, I guess, the end of October. You said October, we'll say the end of October, you know, based on what your inference in the time frame was. So I'm thinking in that case, we certainly want to have, yeah, I could see the smoke coming from Bob's ears there. Yeah, trying to think actually when are we going to issue and the time and whatever. So I'm thinking we want to get this finalized sooner than later and set a time frame. So
The only reason that I say we have some time is that,
I mean, we do have some time.
with the design time frame, basically taking schematic design and starting in September.
Yeah.
If we were to advance it much faster, the architect's going to have very, very minimal information that the construction manager is going to be able to assist us with anyway. So, at least by staggering it a little bit, we'll potentially be bringing them on at a period when there's actually stuff that they can start reviewing and looking at with us, because there's going to be
Talking about probably running into
there's a-
November anyway.
there's a programming effort that needs to happen where all the staff need to be interviewed with the architectural team to kind of get an idea as far as adjacencies and where the spaces are going to be laid out within the building. And without really having, a box on a site plan isn't necessarily going to be all that valuable to get construction management feedback on. So, that's the only reason that I.
Greg Carabine, could I ask your opinion on this, seeing as you've kind of been in this business?
Well, I need to know, when do we want them on board? And then we talk with Bob when we have people.
Yeah.
That's the driver. I mean, if there's nothing, there's no sense having a construction manager on board if we don't have anything to show them.
And
So based on your experience, when do we need to have the construction manager on site?
we typically stagger it 3 months after the schematic design starts.
Okay,
And that
Okay,
starts
okay.
in September. Yeah.
so what month do we need to have the construction manager on board?
2 months would be November, 3 months would be December.
So
Okay,
December
so-
third.
December 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you say one.
Good with that?
Mhm.
I would say
Yeah.
for December 1.
And if it slipped a little, it's still, the schematic design effort is,
Goes
you
to
know,
the end. of the-
and even the schematic drawings, we're going. We'll need an estimate, but it won't need to be a very detailed estimate. So the effort required to get a schematic design estimate is going to be very high level and conceptual anyway in nature. We're not going to have, it'll be a rough idea as to what the HVAC system is going to be. It's going to be more narrative based, as far as the type of building materials that we have.
So we're looking at.
If we could get them on board for November 1st, it would probably be prudent just from the standpoint of, yeah, and then we can get the estimate information, give us a little bit of time to
We'll get the
potentially-
contracts done and all that
potentially
stuff.
process it, and if we can have them on board and starting.
So if you're looking at, you want them on. one-
But the decision by October, by November
So if you
first.
want them on board by 1 November, So you're going back, so it's gonna be at least say a week or two to award a contract. So that puts it up to say middle of October. Greg, I think we said this decision by November first.
Yeah, the decision.
So
by
if
the-
we
Yeah.
make the decision, so under contract by mid-November.
Mhm.
So if you guys are done with your interviews and you've made a decision by 1 November.
Yeah, because we're gonna run into Thanksgiving and stuff at that
Right,
point too. you know.
Yeah. so
That's-
if they're
because
under
our
contract
scheduled
by-
meeting is
before
Thanksgiving.
So if we could get it issued by the beginning of September, probably.
Between the
Yeah.
first couple weeks. of
Yeah.
September, you'll be-
Yeah.
Beginning, okay, beginning of, that's squeezing right now. Because we only got this here.
Yeah.
A suggestion, when do you, the dates we're talking about, when do you need to issue the solicitation? Because that's gonna drive when we have to have the comments and the final package.
First, second week of September
Yeah.
should work fine.
Yeah, as long as we get it by the end of the second week of September, out on the street, you're gonna give them
Okay, so-
what, 4
so
weeks?
second
Is that
week,
enough
so
time to advertise?
Same as the
So
other
realistically,
conference,
we'll either
yeah.
need
So
a
mid, so now you're
special,
talking mid-October,
Mm.
last couple of weeks of October, you're doing your, you picked your
Yeah.
finalists, you've done your interviews.
Yeah.
And November 1st, you made a decision. So
Mhm.
if we get it out on the street,
Okay, so today's the 15th, so you were to say by the
by
end
September,
of August, everyone has to have the comments in to get a final package?
yeah, I think that's good. I think we have a brief Zoom just to approve it, but that's the only item on the
Right.
agenda.
Mhm.
So,
Special meeting for, just to do that.
Yeah.
That shouldn't take long. Because I think at that point we'll.
Yeah, and
so
any,
who's gonna consolidate all the comments?
I'll do that. So anyone that,
All right, send any comments to Mike, yeah.
Okay, so then when would you have the special meeting? You want?
I have the calendar up actually. so-
Well, I'm just trying to make you use it.
Yeah.
September
I'm-
7th, something around there.
Well, I'm just trying to think what's gonna be in the way of everything.
You got Labor Day weekend.
Oh, good.
Well, I'm not gonna be here that week anyway, so.
Mm.
And my life's gonna get complicated after that.
what do you have in your hands?
So, no, I know what it is literally, but
Do we wanna,
is this to us now for comment?
Yes.
Yes,
You're
Yeah.
done with it or
Mhm.
initially? Okay.
how
Unless any
about the end
conditions
of
are-
August, end of this month, a couple of weeks, so 29th or 30th? Because those are like the 5th week of the month and those don't get a lot of business, as far as city business goes.
Say the 30th of August.
Say the 30th, okay, I'll schedule a Zoom for 30th of August.
Okay.
That sound good to everybody?
Yep.
Sound like a plan?
So I'm just a little unclear. So you want our comments on this
Yep,
by the end of the month?
by the 30th, by that meeting, and Michael will accumulate it and we'll figure out what we're gonna do with it.
Yeah, I'll consolidate all the comments into the draft, or would
If
you
we
rather
can,
we
yeah.
discuss them and then I do it after the meeting?
We'll see what the comments
Okay,
are.
all right.
Is the meeting the 30th?
The meeting's the 30th.
So the notes to Mike are also just the 30th?
No, they're gonna be, gotta be before that, 28th,
28th, fine.
28th,
So notes by the 28th,
yeah, and
Zoom on the 30th.
COB the 28th, and then Zoom on the 30th.
so if we're doing the Zoom on the 30th, you'll have something electronic we can look at prior to the meeting.
Yeah. well,
Yeah,
We're talking.
Shortly thereof.
well, I mean, if depending on the comments, if
Yeah,
there's
it's just gonna be
discussion
the
that needs to
comments,
be had on them, we'll wait before we put them in.
Some might be just minor typo
Yeah.
stuff or whatever, and if that's the case, we'll just incorporate them, but well, there was a lot of that in the last one, dates or whatever, but if it's something, of any substance, then,
Can I make a
Then we'll
comment
talk about
right
it.
now on page 5, the preliminary project schedule? I see that you have a field construction and site work landscaping 8-month period for Stanton School. That is missing in the Greenville School. Are you going to be constructing
So,
field?
so the reason that there's not a field construction,
it's gonna be posted.
it's part of the overall project on Greenville. The reason that I'm breaking it out on Stanton, the reason,
Well,
or
I know
on
it's the
Greenville,
demolition of-
yeah, that's why I'm breaking it out, to make it more clear to the bidders that there isn't any demolition at
We'll go figure Stanton.
Stanton.
We have to.
or
So within
Greenville.
that construction timetable of everything completed by the end of July, that includes the athletic fields.
Correct.
Okay,
because it's an open site. The construction manager should be able to just do all of it all at once, whereas the difference being on the Stanton School, the school needs to stay operational until the new one's built, then we can demolish it and the
right, demolish. it,
field,
you have
field
to-
restoration and site development would be after the demolition.
Okay.
Be a challenge in and of itself.
The bottom line is the Zoom meeting on the 30th, comments by the 28th.
Right. Good, Peter got there?
So when we hired DRA and we were selected. And I made a comment somewhere along the lines of when we were down to the last two, which was. That I didn't have a dog in this fight. What I meant by that is I couldn't differentiate in my own mind.
Yeah.
What really made one story than the other. And I was bothered by that when I walked away. And then I thought about it just globally. In my opinion, what we had was we had submittals in written and then in oral form from each of the contractors. But what we didn't have was evidence. So like, what's their success rate in submitting to OSGCR? Like, how many comments do they have to go back and respond to? Or what's the quality of their changes? How many do they have, or what's the gross number effect of their changes in dollars?
Some of them did
No,
cover
they
some of that,
provided,
some
but
of
we didn't
yeah.
have a breakout of what differentiated one from the other.
Hmm.
And so, so my comment is, as we start to go into this, how do we differentiate in tangible terms?
Well, what you're talking about is, you know, a lot of those changes, who's driving?
Yeah,
I'm not talking about specifically about, we didn't go visit, I'll give you some, we didn't go visit the schools and sites of other schools and say, hey. I
Of the
like
stuff
what
they did,
here.
yeah.
You know, I like what they did here, or I don't understand what they did there, or we didn't get the school, any of the teachers and someone like Greg to go walk through the schools and say, hey, this is really good. I like how this is set up, or
Yeah.
this doesn't work. Well, all I'm saying is from a tangible evidence point of view, I don't.
Again, all
So
right,
as we look
again,
at
as
this,
I pointed out to you, because we did exchange emails about this stuff. And I agree with, in theory, about what you're saying. The problem is maintaining a certain level of fairness from all players. So are we gonna pick out the schools and whatever? Are we gonna show favoritism to any, wind up showing even an inadvertent favoritism to any one vendor? So if we do that, you know, a lot of this, the reason a lot of this stuff has been set up this way is to avoid liability for the city, to be honest with you. And that's the main reason. I'm not saying it's the best thing in the world, but you know, we kind of.
Remember, there's committees just like you guys sit there,
Yeah.
so what the schools look like are also a function of what those municipalities and those committees wanted.
Yeah, and what those
So for you
reports
to-
and
for
everything
you to
else.
go in a school and say, I like this one better than
No.
that one.
no,
you get hung up on individual things. All I'm trying to suggest
Yeah.
is that.
Do you have some
if it's
specific
possible-
that
if There's
you,
some possible way to come up with evidence that makes one. It's potential that they're gonna do better by us, because we're gonna spend
So-
$350 million dollars.
so if I can just comment quickly on what you're looking for.
Yes.
If you were to ask 3 construction companies what their previous change order value was on a project, right? The answers that you get, there's no way to understand the data that's being provided to you in context of one another, right? There's all kinds of different pots of money that are eventually going to get used on these jobs once we get a guaranteed maximum price from the CM. So there's a contingency amount that is utilized by the construction management firm for changes in scope gaps that they may have had, in certain projects. If a committee comes to, the project team and says, hey, we want to change the floor from VCT to marble, right? It wouldn't be stated as a change order that the CM was responsible for because it's an owner-driven change.
Right.
So the information that you're potentially getting provided is.
Yeah, but
so
you're going, but just when it's, okay, but what Peter's asking you, we could theoretically say, what are errors and omissions that cause change orders? What is customer driven change orders? What is site difference change orders. We could ask, I mean, that's what you're asking, it really.
I'm not focused on change orders. I just threw that out as. an
Yeah,
I know, but it's an
example.
example, but to answer your
Example of
question,
what-
Wait.
right.
if you raise the question, the answer is, those are three categories. If we didn't answer them up front.
I think you asked for them in the RFP, you know,
But then-
to have that information.
then-
He's saying if you didn't filter,
even the answers that you get, how would you validate?
So what I just heard from you was, so don't take this wrong, is that you have ignorance on me relative to contractors. And I can't brainstorm with this group or others to come up with what are those things that I could ask for that would differentiate, that I could understand?
No.
So I am asking for, trying to ask that we think about it, and potentially come. Okay, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
suggest that these.
I mean, there are some
Yeah.
cases, Peter, that where the players are just gonna be close
No, that-
in performance. I think that's what we wound up with, particularly with the last two.
I am not.
People that had relationships in the district and stuff. you
I
know?
am not disputing what we did,
Yeah.
with what the results were, they weren't close, or they weren't all great firms, I don't know any of it.
Mm.
All I'm asking is, if we can, is it possible to come up with requesting them to provide information that provides us some.
Yeah, but we
tangible
need
evidence
some
of difference?
specific asks.
That's right.
That's what I'm saying.
so back to the thing, change, site-driven
Right.
change orders, customer.
So we're talking
change
about,
orders.
we're talking about one piece. What else,
Should we
what
come
else
up with
is there?
three?
I think that's something we talk
And then
about
you get
as part of the,
truthful
those two things,
response.
but we talk about this next couple of weeks.
But
Specific things that you want to put into the RFP to do
Right.
that.
And I am not.
And that's what I would want to do.
Control what we.
So
ask.
that's fair to everybody.
That's very different. All I'm saying is, let's try and do that before we put the RFP out.
Right.
So we
Oh,
have.
yeah, no, I
Sure,
mean,
if
that's,
If there's other criteria that you guys are looking
yeah,
for.
no, absolutely. That's not a problem at all.
Give me the recommendations. What I
That's
have,
what you said in
So-
your email.
so
Yeah,
Let's do more due
yeah,
diligence.
to explain,
absolutely.
to
If we
explain,
got the time to do it, let's do it.
to explain what I have in here as far as there's a list of qualifying projects with that's virtually similar to the architect one. We're asking them for 5 projects, the budget, the completion date. If the firm did multiple school construction projects at the same time. There's also within here a schedule of CM services as to all the services laid out individually at all the phases of construction as to exactly what we're looking for, where the CM is going to be able to include the costs. There's a cost proposal that's going to request from them a value for the pre-construction fee, the construction management fee, the contingency percentage, the construction manager's insurance rate, the construction manager's payment and performance bond rate, which those two categories in themselves will be indicators, basically as to how safely the contractor is working, and the bonding rate. There's a construction general conditions staffing matrix cost that didn't print out well, but basically what it's requesting, it has the entire schedule for the project delineated out all the way across. They're going to give us, and rather than asking all of the construction management firms to individually fill in a chart that we've provided to them as far as the staffing is concerned, the approach that I took with this was that they would tell us what they feel we need for staffing. And what that's going to do for us is basically, you're probably going to have construction management firms that'll be able to do this more efficiently with less staff than other construction management firms that are going to tell you that they need potentially 3 different project superintendents for the project, a general building superintendent, a mechanical superintendent, potentially an electrical superintendent, so you'll be able to see that in the scale of their responses as to how much their general conditions costs are. One thing that we're not asking for is the general requirements costs, because at the point of the project that we're at now, without having drawings and specifications fully established, if we were to ask them for general requirements costs, those costs could fluctuate based on what ends up happening with the project. If the site design at Greenville turns out that we need a whole bunch of blasting, potentially you would want additional safety personnel there. If the project evolves in a way that we're doing an extremely mechanical, electrical, plumbing heavy job, potentially you may want to have, and it would be the committee's decision for any general requirements. And when I say general requirements, for those that don't know, a trailer, other dumpsters, various other costs that are associated with the project that aren't staffing
The
costs.
cost of doing
The
business.
cost of doing business.
Well, ultimately, the building construction is dependent on the quality, experience, and ability of the subcontractors hired too.
Well, so
Okay,
so
the
we
G- the
we
G-
won't,
The GC, the general contractor is not gonna hire inferior people because it affects his ability to get future work. So the GC, general contractor, is gonna beat the living snot out of his subs for price, but he's only gonna go with the qualified firms to do it. He's not gonna, if you three give me a price and you're the lowest price, I'm gonna ask, well, what would you, what's the difference? It's almost gonna be similar to what we did when we hired this firm, when we hired DRA.
so
Anyone we're interviewing is gonna be qualified to do the job. Because they're not gonna get to the interview stage. But the general contractor, this construction manager, he's gonna have an overall project manager, like a local firm that does this is AZ Electric.
Right.
Just an example. Okay, what we want to avoid is a state peer where AZ Electric hires themselves to do subcontracting work. This is an analogy. That's gonna be built into the
For the
contract.
guys that built Fox Sports. then.
Right, I mean, right, so the GC is, it's reasonable to ask for the general contractor, who are your subcontractors that you're gonna bring on the team?
so let me just.
Usually, it's usually part
Let
of
me
this.
just clarify this whole thing just for a second. So the construction manager on board for this project prior to the drawings being completed, there won't be fully designed drawings at that point. So there won't be a pool of subcontractors that they could tell us that they're going to be electing to use. They could give us a pool of subcontractors that they may have worked with in the past, but they won't be able to give us a pool of contractors that they would actually be using on this project.
And you gotta.
And it's also,
Right, go ahead.
and it's also all of the
You
purchasing
got the-
protocol as far as this project is concerned is all subject to the Office of School Construction Grants and Review. It'll be a low bid situation when the construction manager bids out these contracts. So as far as who gets selected, as far as the electrical contractor for the job, it would more than likely be the low bid contractor after the construction manager does scope reviews and qualifies the contractor that they get.
Okay, so back to, I guess,
We got somebody nodding their head back there that knows this stuff,
No,
so.
it's- Yeah, because it's a great point. I mean, the public procurement, right, so obviously there's statutes.
Yeah.
That basically say that where
but that's,
if we can prove that we can disqualify a firm because of a major error like that during the scope process, that's something we can identify, but in most cases. it has to.
So really, it depends on the schematic drawings as to the requirements. If you're building a building with spires and gargoyles, you're gonna need specialized Italian stonemasons to build that.
True.
Do they have to be
But-
Italian?
It's a heck of an example, but yeah,
Exactly,
true.
the best in the world, right?
It's not that private.
Well,
Joe is
yeah, but if you
My
build-
grandfather.
Italian.
yeah, but if you're building an elementary school,
You're not gonna have spires and
I mean, if you're
gargoyles,
building an elementary school, you know, you're gonna need electrical, mechanical, you know,
right?
that's very clear. Then the question comes up is then how do we're gonna have this by the 28th, okay? When do we work on the evaluation criteria? Because that's what's driving.
Now.
I know,
well,
so
when
we're
we
gonna
do the
start
meeting
that.
on the 28th, it'd be good if people are thinking as they're reviewing
Yeah.
the questions and potential things that you'd like to ask the folks that are gonna
So-
come in. So really, in a nutshell, what you're evaluating in the selection that you're making here is the firm that gets selected the quality of the estimates that they're doing, the quality of the management personnel that they're providing for the project, the firm's overall perspective as to, how they feel that the project is going to be managed. You're not looking at it from a perspective of, this guy's gonna bring in this set of subcontractors, because at this point, we don't even know what the building is gonna look like. And we won't know that potentially for another few months.
And you're gonna tell a lot from how many mechanics liens have been filed against this.
No, you're not gonna,
Because it's, any sub could put a lien,
Yeah.
Right,
so there's no base, anyone could put a lien, so there's no basis saying, this guy's had 10 liens, this guy has none. That's no.
But a couple of things that you look at, safety, theory and all,
the insurance rates will dictate that to some degree too. I mean,
malicious citations.
yeah, I think a lot is gonna have to depend on references in this situation.
Yeah.
Because even if we did ask, like Greg said, we did ask for owner changes, field changes, and design changes, those could be skewed. And we won't know unless we go to their office and look at their books, but even at that,
you'd have to be
That's not gonna
reviewing
happen
potentially on some of these school projects, 200 changes that, and
Stop the
yeah.
change.
It's just an example.
I was trying
Yeah.
to open.
Oh, no.
Not to focus
Yeah.
on.
So what, that's the thing, we need to come up with specifics to put in the,
It would help that if we're gonna have to comment by the 28th.
Yeah.
You've done this for a living.
Mhm.
Could you provide us what you feel should be an evaluation criteria with scoring that we could then look at?
Mhm.
Rather than us trying to not having done it,
Yep.
could you provide us so that we could have by the 28th comment on the evaluation criteria
Mhm.
and the scope?
so we did talk, obviously, I think, Mike, you provided us with I think me and, Peter, was it you? I can't remember who worked with me on that, yeah. It was you.
I came
you
up
and
with
I
the
did.
questions
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
sent the
And then-
evaluation
right,
criteria.
Right, so then we worked on it, and massaged it a little bit, and, came up with what we got, but I am not gonna tell you I was, jumping up and down over that is a great, great thing, in the question situation, we left pretty much, all we did was whittle down the questions, we had 10, and I whittled it down to 7 or something, and that, I think we could do a better job on interview questions, so.
I think that's what Peter was getting to.
Yeah.
He's saying, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
So
Leave it to
we
I think
we'd like criteria to focus on to differentiate between various firms. He just threw out the changes as,
Yeah,
as an example.
the changes is a good example. I
Right,
mean, it's a great example. It's just trying to quantify it is the tough part.
correct. But in your experience in hiring construction managers, which areas should we be looking at to differentiate between?
Yeah, and
He mentioned some
And I can
places,
easily
yeah.
get you some of that, and within the scope, as you read this, if you haven't read the draft, there's quite a bit of information in here that should lead a construction manager to understand what we're looking for, right? Because it's a state-funded Office of School Construction Grants project, that's gonna be one of the most important things. They have a certain, criteria as to how these things need to be submitted for the first year, give or take, that the construction manager is on board. They won't even be building anything. They'll be helping us with the pre-construction effort and ensuring that we have good budgets that are gonna hold all the way through to when the actual construction happens. We need someone that has, a good idea of the market, the volatility and where the market's going and what escalation looks like. So the estimates that they're providing to us are something that, are realistic when we actually get to the construction phase of the project.
Or ordering transformers that may take 2 or 3 years.
Correct, and
Well,
as you,
and that might come out, get flushed out in an interview, where a CM will say, hey, we may want to expedite some of the design to alleviate some of these long lead time items.
I mean,
Right?
there's,
And we've run into problems here or there or whatever, and they can give some examples of how it can be done. Those are the types of, things that you hope to elicit out of them. But if you don't, those are questions that we can ask during the interview process. you
Or
know,
potential
lot of it is-
shortages in copper or steel or
Right.
whatever.
a lot of it too is, quite honestly, it's gonna be the people that you get on the site. Really, because, you know, you're only as good as, the people that you present on site. And that are gonna be running the project. You know, one big thing for us that we always emphasize, constructability. You know, how thorough are your constructability reviews? Give us an example. Show us a constructability review that you've done to see what kind of detail that we're talking about. You know, that comes in the pre-con. And I'm sure these people listening, you know, like the guy behind me, he's gonna be picking up on that, but, you know, that's important because that reduces your changes. If you have a good constructability review, that construction manager has just reduced a lot of your changes because he's finding those issues before it goes out to bid.
So I never thought of constructability review, even though as soon as you said, I get it.
Yep.
How do we differentiate?
I mean, that's hard, right? That's,
So that's the question.
I know,
Yeah.
people, that's the hard part. That really is, because how do you quantify that, right? I don't know, you know, because.
I think,
Did they,
Yes.
I think,
how many change orders did they prevent?
So-
You know, it's so hard.
so potentially, you
I
know,
wish there was an answer I could give you.
to put your mind at ease with these projects. Just the simplest requirement first that we're gonna be evaluating is like one of the criteria, the presence with OSCGR and someone building a school. You need to have the bonding capacity first off to build a school. So there's a limited pool of candidates that are gonna have the bonding capacity to do this, the experience to do this, and at the end of it, not to
Some companies may actually team up.
not to minimize it.
I'm
You're likely not gonna get someone that isn't capable of doing it. It's just how they're gonna be delivering it and how much it's gonna cost.
Yeah, I've seen in the past that some companies actually will literally team up because of the
Mhm.
bonding.
That's how New
Issue,
London
you
did
know,
their,
yeah.
their high school.
So you may have two CMs under the banner of one that actually, you know,
A
get
joint
together and do
venture.
the project and just because of the bonding requirements. You have to have the resources to deal with it.
So, I have a comment by 28th, meeting on the 30th.
20th, good, thank you for getting us back on track here, good.
He's thanking you.
I said, thank you, yes. No.
The marks on his thinking bricks.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
So the, like Greg said, so. All right, so we know where we're at, let's
Just
move on.
One quick note to save everyone the trouble. You can go to page 11 and just hash out item I in the bid phase services. It didn't, that's an old carryover.
I did send them the
Yeah.
PDF
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
so if you
Yeah.
got an update or something
Yeah.
like that, we can.
It's an
we
old,
fixed
it's
it.
an old statement that got changed right
Okay,
before the
so
final one.
do we have this as a word?
You don't.
Okay, because if we do it as a word, it's gonna be a lot easier to check.
You printed it out as a PDF. You sent it out as a PDF, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you have the original in the Word format?
I do.
So if you want to send it out as a Word format, I'll just send it to me. All right,
If I can get it to you, I will.
okay, because then I'll just set it up for track changes and
Right.
send it to the group. That's all. That's
Okay.
okay. And I know it's work product and stuff. So there's some sensitivity there maybe,
Well,
but I can think of $3.6 million. 3.6 million reasons why you might want to send it our way.
no, it's also 3.6 million times that this document will show up in other opportunities.
Yeah, I know, just. I ain't sure, I'm just, I'm keeping it in-house, so you know, as much as possible, anyway, gosh.
So
Hey, look, I-
basically, just to further the description of this, you know, similar to the architect, the bid form has a deduct cost if the committee elects to select the same architect or same construction manager for both projects. We've asked for a deduct on the pre-construction phase services only against the general conditions, and for the construction phase services as a deduct if they're given both projects. for the general conditions portion of the project.
Are we soliciting construction manager for both schools? Or are we soliciting for two?
Both ways away.
Yes.
And we're gonna talk about something else too. There's
What?
also some,
What do you mean by both ways?
Well, are we? We're gonna,
they could submit it either for either one or both.
They can, yes. It's completely independent.
why wouldn't you want all bids on the two schools? So we're not dealing with two construction managers.
I agree. but
You have the option.
That's the committee's choice.
And
But if you ask for that.
Do you want to say, do you want to make that decision now?
Right, that would make sense to me.
Or we can make it when we finalize the.
Okay, but it would make sense to, then you, because
we
otherwise.
talked about this, there was some dispute at first, and then when we sat down and talked about the architect situation, I don't think you were there.
Right,
I thought that we were gonna have a, not a knockdown drag out, I mean, not that we have them here, but
Spirited
I thought we were
discussion.
gonna have a spirited discussion whether we wanted to do one or two that way. And it seemed that right away, the consensus was that we wanted one group to have both, because we weren't dealing with two
So,
different people,
so from a reimbursement standpoint, it more or less has to be two bid forms anyway. Because the way that the state
two separate
reimburses.
projects.
yeah, but you're hiring one firm to do both.
Right.
So then.
If that's
and
what we
then
want to do.
The larger.
I'm not presuming to make that
Yeah,
decision for the group.
no, I'm just, if you're hiring one firm to be the construction manager for both. Okay, then you're going up to scale for the firms that you're
Yeah.
looking at.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be easy to make the decision, where if we're looking at, you could have,
more players with one school
Right,
too,
that's what I'm
so,
saying.
yeah, so just because of the bonding issue and stuff like that, just for the sheer.
I mean, in that case, right, if that's what it turns into, then. They're going to need to be competitive because of the deducts, right?
Right.
With all things similar, if a big firm tries to come in and win both of these. You may elect to go with two smaller firms because their general conditions costs and the cost to do the work. Would be less than the other firms.
yeah, but you said that was almost the opposite of what you said at the beginning of the meeting, that if you went with a firm that was more efficient, the size of the firm didn't matter, where a larger firm may be more efficient, so they could have one superintendent for two schools.
You likely wouldn't see that,
Right.
but
No,
I don't know that I
Yeah.
would recommend
No,
accepting
I agree.
a firm with one superintendent trying to do $60 million dollar
All right.
jobs.
So
I
you're
think-
thinking
I-
bigger firms, economies. of
$260
scale.
million.
Yeah.
Potentially, I mean, or the opposite.
Or the opposite.
Well, I mean, bigger firms have more staffing in a lot of cases, bigger
Bigger
firms have more overhead,
Right.
bigger firms are gonna be looking for more, if a firm's gonna do one of these projects with a project executive, a project manager, a superintendent, and a project engineer. And they've demonstrated that they can do that. And potentially a safety officer, and then a larger firm comes in and they have two superintendents, a project manager, a project executive, an assistant superintendent, an assistant project engineer. Now you need a trailer that can support 8 people, so then the cost of the trailer goes up. I mean, there's a variety of responses that you're gonna see from this, so, the real criteria in my mind is the experience of the people that you're getting on the project.
So potentially the spread between the cost is probably gonna be more than. Or either your firm or DRA that we hired through the process between the competing firms.
Right, I mean, you'll likely see the same spread, I mean,
Or a greater spread than,
potentially,
potentially.
right, you're gonna see different costs, so. While cost should be a consideration, also the experience and the references of the people that are on the team is also gonna be important.
Plus the type of buildings they build, Norwich with its high requirements for special ed, multi-language learner labs and things like that.
To some degree, that isn't gonna matter to the construction management firm. I mean, if you look at any of the firms that are submitting on this. Building a school is probably one of the least technical buildings that a lot of the firms in the state have done. You're gonna have people that are submitting that have worked at Yale University and built some of the most world-renowned technical lab spaces in the country. You're gonna have folks that have, potentially built a football stadium. You're gonna have folks that have, built hospitals, and none of these spaces that we're building even comes close to the amount of technical
Complexity.
expertise that's needed to build one of those buildings.
I did want to mention, I'll mention right now that, Jim did contact me regarding an issue, in the draft, there's a thing that includes, I know we've just touched on it on a couple of occasions, the possibility of a PLA. So, I did include the May, be a PLA. We'll talk about that later, I think, under anything else. So, project labor agreement. So that, we'll get into some detail later. Yeah, so that's a different animal. So, although it's not the same, so we're gonna skip over that.
That would be what, like minority owned? or-
Yeah, it's right. No, so you develop criteria for the, like, local people, local
and
county
minority
contractors and stuff
Mhm.
like that, those kind of things. So, and that'd be basically enforced by the unions. So they're involved. So, all right, hang on. So, and it used to be that union scale wasn't prevailing wage scale, but that isn't the case anymore. Union scale is prevailing wage scale, so there isn't a real, cost labor wise, although administratively there's some issues. So I'm sure, but the unions basically would be responsible for enforcing most of the stuff. We're trying to keep track of it, so. No, I don't think so. So, but there's only, like I said, labor, as Peter sent me a note, it raises costs. But it doesn't raise labor costs only because of the scale. It's different than what it used to be. It's not the same as what it used to be.
But that's not an item for tonight.
Well, no, it's not right now on the agenda, but we'll, I'll just talk about it a little bit at the end of the meeting. Meeting schedule next steps, we've already talked about some of that. So I think we've got that covered, unless,
Well, we have the meeting with the Board of Ed on the 23rd.
right. And then we got the 28th
Next week.
to have questions, to have state stuff in on the RFQ. 30th, we'll schedule a special Zoom, and then we'll have the regular meeting.
On the line on the Board of Ed.
in
19.
Yeah.
19th, yeah, the regular meeting will be
The
in,
specs.
Okay.
right, the regular meeting will be in
The
September.
23rd at Kelly, I don't know if it's 5:30 or 6 o'clock, but I'll have to look up board docs.
Yeah.
And Mike, I think we need, probably a timeline,
Oh, it's on my
process, explanation.
The
Yeah,
19th,
so
19th, yeah.
when I look at the memo that you guys have, it'll likely be similar to the memo that I had sent to Mark when in format, where it'll have a description that everyone can read, and then we'll go into
Right.
more detail at the meeting prior to having everyone vote on the resolutions.
Okay, and then I don't know if there's any particular sample motions that are required by
Yeah,
the state.
the memo the memo will likely, and I need to talk to Mark, would come from Mark to the Board of Ed as the chairman of this committee. And then it would have all those motions in a history. I'll write it and
And I think you said you need at least 2 motions, one for Greenville, one for Stanton.
correct, yes. And they need to be independently approved. You can't approve them both the same, and it would have to
And
be a
then you
separate.
needed a separate special meeting following the meeting to approve the minutes of
Yes.
that meeting.
Mhm.
Okay,
The dance card's very full.
So
Summer off, that's for sure.
Go ahead, Sheila, you had something
I
to
have
say
a
about that?
question, since we're having a special meeting on the 30th, can we pass the resolution on the 30th? Or, I mean, don't you need the resolution to submit by September 1st?
No, yeah, but we don't have to, the Board of Ed has to pass it. We don't have to pass it. Yeah, it's
Okay,
correct.
I'm sorry, okay. So
No.
that's the special meeting on the
23rd, you said?
23rd, is that,
Yeah,
At Kelly.
Board of
Okay.
Education.
that's the Board of Ed, okay. Sorry about that.
Then we'll need another meeting, probably a Zoom meeting with like a 5-minute Zoom meeting just to approve the minutes of that 23rd meeting.
Meeting,
It'll
okay.
either be the next day or 2
Yeah.
days from then.
Mhm.
And both of those, I guess you'll need the minutes of both of those to go to.
Yeah.
As
I'll
part of
need,
the
I'll need
application.
certified copies of both of those sets of minutes
Yeah,
that are signed off by the recording secretary for the Board of Ed. And then those will get uploaded to the state in the core CT thing when we make the grant submission to
yeah,
the state.
just included all the email to me.
I will.
All right, and I'll forward it to Amber.
Anyway, can you work with me,
All right.
Suzanne, that's the one.
So then we'll go on, so yeah, so the regular meeting then would be the 19th. I'm not sure it'll be on the agenda then, but I think we'll talk about,
So
interview schedule and, what we're, and interview questions and stuff like that. I think during the special, I'll probably add some of the scoring matrix stuff for discussion too. So,
and I'll have a draft scoring matrix. Do you want draft questions that would be asked at the interview as well, or just the
Yes.
criteria?
Yes,
no, yeah, both, yeah.
Okay,
my yes was his vote.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're lucky we have you doing this. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yes.
I was gonna say something.
my
Yes.
I was just gonna snap fold into the 3.6 million.
You like that one, huh?
No, but but
Oh, I know.
but Christine's right, to have somebody with your
Yeah.
expertise guiding us along the way is very valuable.
Keep that in mind, because remember, we had discussion, you guys had discussions about why we needed an order.
Yeah.
Right.
You know why.
That's it.
Oh, no, I get it.
Imagine us doing all this,
Yeah.
trying to do all
This
this.
is too many.
I'm just reminding.
I gotta get a new email address just for this
It's my
project.
favorite, it's my favorite when we get called into projects at the end of them, after they've done them without an owner's project manager.
Try to reverse engineer
To
it.
try and figure out exactly what happened over
Alright.
5 to 10 years.
All right, so let's move on. Anything else to be brought before the committee? Joe DeLucia, I guess. We'll start.
So Mark already mentioned the idea. I would like the committee to investigate and consider the use of a project labor agreement for this entire well, obviously for the first 2 schools that we have in front of us. I think it would be valuable for the committee to hear from the New London County Building Trades Council, the Connecticut Building Trades Council, and there's one more, I believe the Carpenters
Carpenters
have their
Union.
own, to talk about what a project labor agreement is, what it means to us as a committee, what it means to a project or projects of this scale. And how those agreements can impact the community, because it's really, it's not just about prevailing wage and unionized workers. It's about what's the educational component, how can our citizens be involved, right? How can our local contractors be engaged? When I say the educational component, we have a technical school in this city, we have a high school in this city. There's great educational value for those kids that can all be facilitated through the project labor agreement. And just hear what the whole what's the word I'm looking for, the whole philosophy and process and mechanism is, and see if it's
I'll
something
send
that will
I
put,
think Joe sent me a
priority
draft agreement. I'll share it with the committee too.
Now,
So we can,
how does that affect cost? Did you consider that in your estimate?
when,
Well, it's not our estimate. The estimate came from the master plan that DRA provided,
Well, okay.
and I don't know,
Just saying.
Yeah.
I hear. what
there's
you're
no,
saying.
there's no labor cost. there could be some administrative, because not any real labor. Let's put it this way, the wage rates aren't any different.
Okay.
All right, let's put it that way. So will that make a difference in what the bids come in? I can't say.
Okay.
But the prevailing wage is union scale now.
And that would be, and that has been a conversation, that has transpired, the building trades councils have reached out to me through my work. They were part of my network. So they reached out to me, and that was part of the conversation. I know that they had that conversation with them. I believe that they met with the mayor, and they had that conversation with the mayor, but that would be important discussion for this committee to have with them if we have them come in and present to us.
Okay, but if we haven't, you only have people come in if you're looking to make a decision. So are they coming in to sell the PLA, or is it just informational only?
Both, there's no reason to
Well,
come
no,
here.
I mean,
coming in-
because if they're coming in to give a presentation,
Yeah,
okay, do you as the chairman expect us to vote on that, or just thank you for the info?
Well, if somebody wants to put it forward as a
Right.
motion and
Well,
whatever.
I'm just saying,
then
I mean, it's an anticipation of, they're coming in,
Mhm.
they're looking to sell the process.
Mhm.
And we as a board, are we looking to vote on? a
There-
yea or nay?
I will tell you, there are some things I'm interested in, and particularly regarding, local contractors and stuff like that, having those kind of aspects.
Well,
Having some control over that, making sure that we have local contractors that have opportunities of people that, pay taxes here and
Well,
stuff.
I
So
agree with the concept. I'm just asking, if you're asking them to come in, is informational briefings or decision briefings?
So it's gonna be.
there's nothing on the table.
Right, there's nothing on the table, but they would come in and inform the committee,
And
and
if we
then,
want to move forward on it, then that's something we
exactly right,
decide.
exactly right.
So there's nothing on the table. I'm not putting anything on the table.
I would say that,
We're not gonna have a meeting that night and decide, yes, we're enacting the PLA.
That's what I'm
No.
asking, right.
educational.
So-
Right.
right,
So
exactly,
it's
right.
strictly an information
Yeah.
with no expectations. So they're not coming in to sell, they're coming in for information.
They're hoping to sell. I will. there's-
Well-
I know they are, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Yeah.
That's the
Well-
truth. That's crazy not to think that.
Okay.
Well, think about it, anybody that's coming before us, either all the interviews that we've already had has been a sales pitch, right? Hire us, right? So this would be we want to call it a sales pitch on the concept of a PLA. But it would be providing the committee with information,
There's apprenticeship stuff.
Right, so that-
too.
so that if a member of this committee wanted to put forward a motion that we make PLAs part of the overall deal, then the committee already has the information, and then if to move forward, a motion is made and it's seconded, and the committee would vote and make a decision.
Being as our time is valuable, we set it time, rather than have an open-ended, if we're gonna have a group come in, or we're gonna tell the group, you have 15 minutes from your informational, so they have a managed expectation, rather than they come in and they talk until we go.
Could say
Yeah.
30 minutes or
I'm
something.
just saying,
Yeah.
just a time,
Yeah.
you never set a time, it's never a definite.
I would imagine that at some point, we're gonna reach out to the building trades council, the various building trade council. I'm gonna say, we'd like to invite you in and come in and make a presentation, and then set parameters.
Now, we have in one group, or is it couple of groups?
There's three that I'm aware of right
Okay,
now.
so they have 3 separate presentations.
No,
That's my question.
no. They got to get together.
I want
Yeah.
to hear Joe's
Nine,
answer.
2, and 3.
Well, it's not my sole decision. I'm just
No.
saying that
I'm not putting you on. the
I'm not
spot.
feeling three.
I don't,
Yeah, they-
listen, I get put on the spot all the time, all right, so
Usually there's somebody in the lead.
it's in my comfort
No,
zone,
I'm
right?
I'm just trying
Having
to,
heard these before.
okay, I'm just trying to ask.
Is it advantageous to them that we have PLAs?
It's advantageous to the unions because they
That's
would
what I'm
have members
saying.
doing work, their
It
members
is.
working on the project.
I'm not familiar with what it is, so. that's
So,
what I'm
yeah, so that's,
So we're gonna see them come with their cup of dirt and the new vacuum suck it up. But we don't wanna see 3 vacuums.
all right, Sheila, you
We
got
just want the
something?
one,
I agree. I'm just. parameters.
correct.
Go ahead, Sheila.
Yeah, okay, so my question is having, because I am going back to the earlier question, is it say educational and sales at the same time? But it's not, that's not what my question is. It is, if a motion were to be put on the floor for a PLA, what would that impact, whether it was voted yes or no? I'm not trying to dictate a yes or no. I'm trying to say, what would it impact, or when would it have to be determined before something was released or not released?
Mike can check me on this, but it is my understanding that whether or not we're going to have a PLA needs to be decided before the projects go out to bid, because anybody who's bidding on this needs to know that a PLA is in place.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah, you just, you have to have it, you know, a CM, the CM most likely will be assisting in managing that PLA. That's why we, you know, put verbiage in the RFP that they'll alert them that there is the possibility of a PLA. But yeah, you need to have that in place prior to going out to bid.
For trade contractors,
Right.
not for
Not for
construction
CM.
management services,
Yes,
because
thank you.
the
Right.
managers that are managing the subcontractors aren't.
And they're already being alerted to.
Yeah, and it's in here.
Yeah.
And they're alerted that it may or may not happen.
Right.
That's all that.
So
it
we
says.
don't, okay, so if I understand you, we don't need it for for what we're reviewing, the construction manager and that RFP that will go out sometime in September. And we'll
Correct.
review it in October and select the construction manager. But then after, for any RFPs or whatever it is, because I'm not quite sure who's going to run the next bidding, we select the construction company.
The construction manager will then put all of the subcontracting trade packages out to bid, meaning the electrician, the guy that's gonna dig the hole for the building, the mason, roofing contractor, all of them. And it would be prudent to have a decision made somewhere in the design development or early in the construction document phase, just to make sure that if there is a cost impact to potentially entering into a PLA, that the estimates that we're providing to the state are accurate and that we're on budget when we go out to bid for trade contract bids.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's something I think in the discussing this, that we're gonna have to consider if there is a financial.
So that timeline, when would they be hiring subcontractors?
So if you go to page 5 on the, if you go to page 5 of 26 of the RFP, the area that says bid/GMP is when they would actually be bidding the project. And if it's being bid as a PLA, the potential subcontractors that can bid on it would need to be willing to enter into a project labor agreement. Meaning they're signatory with the trade council, or they're willing to sign the agreement to work on the project.
So approximately a year after we hire the construction manager.
Correct, but there still is an impact if there is a cost to entering into a PLA, that you would want to know that component earlier so that the estimates are.
Yeah, it seems to me that where you have state and local approvals, the state approval part that's happening November to December 24.
Those are regulatory approvals,
So, but that doesn't include what we're reporting back to,
again, you're gonna want it
OSG.
sometime probably between January 24 and say July 24, somewhere in that window.
So we're 5 months out.
24, I mean,
Right.
24, yeah.
July 20. So next
Mark,
middle.
can I go?
Middle of next year,
think you should
not.
ask a
not-
question.
Can
Go
I
ahead,
go?
Sheila.
Right, so I'm trying to keep the process in my head straight. So the construction manager explain, because I haven't read the document. I mean, it just got to us. So the construction manager, is it a individual or is it a company?
Company.
Company.
Yeah.
Who is the general contract? Is that the same as the
That's what
general
the
contract?
RFP was for.
They're essentially the general contractor, but the delivery method requires that there's transparency.
It's a construction, yeah.
It's a more transparent general contractor.
Okay. I'm not quite sure what.
If you'd like to give me a call, Sheila, I could explain it to you.
Okay, well, let me read through, because like I said, I'm doing this without having read anything right now, so I'm just trying to, but if I have questions, Mike, I will call you.
Yeah, we're gonna, I
Please
mean,
feel
we're gonna
free
have
to
to get
call.
more information here anyway, so I mean, this is, I don't, I'm not prepared. I wasn't trying to develop a big discussion
This
over
is
this.
we're telling the people we want to hire as the CM, that
Mhm.
we would like to leave open the option for PLA, which we will investigate in 2024.
Well,
Or
between now
before-
and
or
then, yeah.
before.
Between now and
Yeah.
2024.
Right,
And then at that point, then we make a decision based on the
Right.
information,
Right.
right.
yes or no,
Yeah.
going further. But
Just
we
sooner
retain the
rather.
option
Yes,
with this going to
Yes.
CM.
yes.
Right,
This doesn't
Okay.
limit us.
Yes,
No,
good. So we have to
exactly.
vote on something like what's next?
no, there you go, there you go.
I'm at the what next.
Yeah.
All right,
What
well,
next?
next is we don't necessarily have
What-
to do anything, we gotta, we'll set
Go
up
home
a
and
time.
read, go home and read this, and if you have
We will-
questions,
right,
send them out.
Right, so the do questions for the 20th. So what it is, we will extend an invitation at some point for them to appear before us at the regular meeting. That's what we'll do. So when that is, I don't know, so we'll figure that
And
out.
all our options are open.
All our
Yes.
options are.
Once this is.
The
sold
only-
up,
well,
Right, once
yes.
this, once we.
Not
All of
prepare
your
for
options
this.
are open.
Can I ask one quick question, you might, does this, do PLAs negate the use of non-union workers?
It doesn't necessarily negate it. It just means that a non-union contractor would have to sign the project labor agreement. And you would have to talk to each individual contractor as to whether or not they would be willing to do that.
Yeah, so there's other requirements.
Yeah,
In a.
Yeah, I started reading the definition. I'm
Yeah,
like,
so
Is there,
when they start, if you look at it, I mean, because there's a lot about, how, I'm particularly concerned with, I want to provide opportunities for local contractors,
yeah.
so
Wonderful.
that's my big thing. So I would like to see that. So, and also I'm interested in apprenticeship programs and things like that, supporting those kind of things personally. Because I think there's, and we maybe, I think as a society, we've maybe dropped the ball a little bit on some of this stuff that, that a four-year college isn't for everybody. And that we, electricians and plumbers and stuff, they all make decent money, and
And to
Okay,
that end,
and I'll tell you,
to that end, we've got-
there's a huge shortage in the trades.
Right, and we've got 4 tech schools in this region
Right,
that can just pump graduating seniors into these,
the process is good.
prevailing wage jobs.
The
and-
Department
and
of
they're
Labor
into
has
their
a project labor
apprenticeships.
agreement resource guide. So if you want
Oh,
to just Google that, that'll explain from the Department of Labor what it is and what.
super.
It's a.
So like I said, so they'll give them a
First
chance
we
from their
do this.
perspective. Huh? Let's
First
do
we
it.
do
Yeah, so
this.
right,
Yeah.
first we do that, right. So just wanted to do that. All right, is there anything else to be brought before the committee? Hearing nothing, a motion to adjourn will be in order.
Oh, I like
Motion,
that.
motion to adjourn.
Whatever that one,
Greg
yes.
Malassi makes the motion.
He wants to
Second
it
by
too.
Greg also, Greg
Two
Carapet,
Gregs,
two Gregs. God bless them. God bless them. So the motion is in order and no discussion is allowed. As such, we will go to roll call vote. I say yes. Joe
Yes.
DeLucia, Christine, Mark Kulos, Peter, Cindy,
Yes.
Greg, Bill Ho,
Yes.
Sheila Hayes,
Yes.
and it's a unanimous 10-0 with the exception of the one that's absent at the other meetings, Stacy. So motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:12 p.m. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. And we'll see you on the 30th.
On a Zoom, right?
On the Zoom. The 30th will be as